have been gifts all the time. The students then are like Mark Twain, who came back from college and found his father a whole lot smarter. The non-Christian poet of India, Rabindranath Tagore, whose book I brought along, a book that has suffered over the years with my much use of it, says it well in a poem. Hang on. I'll quote it then from a different source. Day by day, you are making me worthy of the simple, great gifts that you gave to me unasked. This sky and the light, this body and the life and the mind. The simple, great gifts. We're surrounded by them, we carry them with us. My insight is that learning gratitude opens our eyes to invitations, like the invitation to dig in that field, felt by those children and so richly rewarded. The father in that fable reminds me of the father of the prodigal son and his older brother in Luke chapter 15. That father is saying to both those children, not just in his words, but mostly in his life, all I have is yours. Though they may not have experienced it yet, those children are not entitled, they're gifted. And he invites both of them to come into the party, to celebrate and to share. So gratitude leads to lots of things, to being confident in the gifts we have received, to noticing our invitations in life, to enjoying our gifts and celebrating our gifts. And gratitude leads to sharing our gifts, a basic Christian way of serving as those in the IVC serve. Larry?
What we're offering is the opportunity to dig, which is very Ignatian, of course, not answers so much as maybe giving tools with which to dig. So poems, scripture, Aesop's fable. The term entitlement fascinates me, that Greg used. To what are we entitled? And wealthy can be entitled to first places and honors. They're entitled. What Ignatian spirituality moves to is titlement, not entitlement, but name. I offer you a scripture, Matthew 20, 27, 28 in there. Jesus gives his name in a sense, and he says, I am not to be served. That's not my name. My name is my title. I'm titled to be servant. And he says, those who wish to be great will be servants. In Philippians 2, as we know, Paul writes that Jesus did not consider equality, entitlement, but titled himself, emptying himself to become the title of servant. I have not come to be served, but to serve. That's my title. And what Ignatian spirituality moves, as Greg says, from gratitude to generosity or service. I can't give what I don't have. I can't give what I don't like. And that's what prayer does. It, as Greg just said, and we'll say that God is constantly at the service work of giving us a title, giving us a name. And the name is not to serve God. This might be new for you, might sound crazy, but we are not dedicated to serving God. Jesus was in service of God's creative love, salvific love, and says, I am a servant and invite you to serve God's people with me. In John 13, he invites, I've given you an example, a model, by washing your feet. Can you come and in gratitude, with gratitude, be titled servant in me and with me? And that's our conversion. What is our title? We are not served. Or let's say this, we are not to serve ourselves. We are allow Jesus to be servant to us, giving us a new name and giving us a self that we can not only appreciate, but embrace as a gift. That's what we're titled to.
Sorry, I just had a problem with a mouse that died. If you've ever been on Zoom and your mouse has died, you know that you're crippled. But I found the mute and unmute button in the meantime. Sorry about that. I ask us to consider a man who found himself newly titled, newly named. And that's a favorite for Christians to pray with, Peter. And specifically in Luke's Gospel in chapter 5. I think Luke has us wanting to look at Simon, who will become Peter, in the early chapters of his Gospel as someone who admires Jesus immensely. He's taken with this man's words. This man is touching something in him that has never been touched before. But he has been in the outside circle, only looking at this man, wondering if he could ever become his friend. So he's thrilled when Jesus asks if he can use his boat to teach people. Happy to do it. And then Jesus asks him to go out and fish and let Jesus come along. Go into the deep. And he knows it's useless, but a gesture towards this great man, he'll do it. What happens out in the waters cuts deeply into this man. Suddenly, there is a huge catch of fish. All of his fellow fishermen are busy with trying to bring in this haul. They're calling to companions in another boat to come. And in the midst of all this frenzy, Simon looks into the eyes of Jesus and knows this is a gift of love. In my early days praying this, I thought what happened next was some kind of ancient gesture of reverence or something. that Simon Peter throws himself at the feet of Jesus and says, "Depart from me." A huge moment for me came in praying this episode, where I began to see that that is exactly what I would say to Jesus. Stop this right now. As much as I am thrilled by the chance of a more personal friendship and association with you, we're both going to be disappointed. You'll be sorry, and so we should stop this right now before the pain begins for both of us. And at that vulnerable moment of realizing a gift, Jesus draws Simon Peter closer to himself and says, "Don't be afraid. In fact, from now on, join me in my service," that Larry was just talking about. Jesus titles him with a new identity that cuts deeper into Peter, and that is, fish people with me, serve people with me, accept the gift, come closer. Jesus invests in Peter, and gratitude opens Peter up to this invitation of his life to leave other things behind and join Jesus. Gratitude, like that which Peter comes to feel for Jesus's gift, those great simple gifts that Tagore talked about. Gratitude has been for me a great shaper of life. I will explain when we talk next that I find it shaping my life much better than other things. In the Ignatian tradition, God is the great creator, and his creation didn't stop when he got things going. God is still creating people like Peter in Jesus, through Jesus, into being even more who he is. So God becomes the great giver and inviter. I grew up probably thinking of God as the great accountant. No, God is the one who keeps inviting us into new things in our life, into treasuring what we have. And so Jesus is not the great demander or commander. He is, as with Peter here, the great inviter. We've been praying with students lately through the Passion. I remind you of what happens with Peter there. In Luke chapter 22, watch verses 31 and 61. There, Jesus, in telling Peter that he will deny him, already frames it in terms of Peter's invitation coming out of the denial. You will deny me 3 times. I've prayed for you all that Satan won't sift you like wheat. And I have prayed for you, Peter, that when you turn, you will serve your brothers and sisters. Jesus is already looking at that denial in terms of the new invitation it brings Peter. Jesus is already looking at that failure of Peter's in terms of the deeper invitation it will bring to serve brothers and sisters. And that's why in Luke, it's so central that as Peter is denying Jesus, after the 3rd denial in Luke at verse 61, Jesus looks at Peter. That's not a look of upbraiding, of condemnation, or even of criticism. It's the same look of love Peter knew on that boat long ago. And that's what breaks Peter's heart, is that Jesus loves him even in the midst of denial, and makes that into a moment of invitation. Larry? Larry, you're muted. Better.
I'd say let's have a little time of quiet individually. Everybody is muted wherever you are. Just ponder such things as Jesus as servant, you as servant with him, you as gifted, you as Jesus giving you a name that counterstates any negative name you might have for yourself. So let's, if that's all right, Anne, let's have maybe 5 minutes of quiet, and then we'll come back, and you can call us back in 5 minutes, and we not so much questions. We don't want a discussion as much as what has helped you so far. That's probably, or what is helping you in Ignatian spirituality. Anne?
Thank you so much. So it's about, I have my watch set at 11:23. We'll come back just before 11:30 at probably 11:28, 11:29. For this time of quiet, silent reflection, if you would like, you can turn your camera off if you would like some more privacy. And then when we rejoin, we'll have a chance for people to share some of their, what they're reflecting on. Okay, I'll start welcoming people back. It's almost that time. So in about a minute, when I think everyone will have hopefully rejoined us, we are going to share some reflections, and we'll let Father Carlson and Father Gillick kind of guide that. But if you would like to share something, we are going to try to do the hand raise function. So we're gonna give that a shot. We've never done anything like this, so it'll be a bit of an experiment. But if you're on video, you can manually raise your hand too, and then I'll call on you so that way not everyone's talking at once. So if you would like to share something, you can.
I see Donald's hand up.
Okay, Donald, you can share. Yeah, thank you.
First, this is the second year I've been going through Creighton's online spiritual exercises. The other one was 2 years ago, and in between I did them from another Jesuit. So I appreciate your online spiritual exercises. Two things. Number one, Peter was invited on the boat to a closer relationship with Jesus, much closer than he had had before. And of course, I hope for that, a closer relationship. And secondly, Jesus knew that Peter would fail and keeps inviting him. And he knows that I will fail, Don Gimbel, and he looks upon me with love and invites me to pick myself up and resume again. So those were two meaningful reflections that I'd never thought of before.
Thanks, Don.
I saw Joe Walters had his hand up as well. So Joe, you can go if you'd like.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Walters. I'm zooming in from Long Beach, New York. And I just have a brief share. I was thinking about going fishing this afternoon. They're in the ocean behind me. And when Father talked about Jesus inviting Peter fishing, I just had a really warm feeling of friendship between Jesus and I, and between Jesus and Peter. You know, just a casual thing like, let's go fishing, and you're really going to have a big day. So I kind of live up here in my head a lot, and when I have an emotional connection with Jesus or our parent God, that's always remarkable and something that I treasure. So thank you very much for doing this today. I'm a long-time user of the Creighton Daily Reflections, and I've listened to Father Gillick's retreats many times driving between New York and Norman, Oklahoma, where I also live. So thank you for everything. Bye.
Joe, I wish you great luck in fishing, just as I wish the Green Bay Packers great luck on the football field tomorrow afternoon.
Go New York Giants and Oklahoma Sooners. And Fordham Rams.
And the Boston College Eagles.
They're playing Notre Dame in football.
Against Notre Dame. No, against Notre Dame.
That splits Catholic devotion.
Sounds like Ignatian litanies here.
And should we, unless somebody else wants to raise a hand, should we go on?
I think we should. I don't see any. Oh, I see the Finneys have a hand raised, and then maybe after that we can go on.
Terry and Connie, good to see you.
Good to be seen. Okay, my feeling reaction is serving people. Jesus this to be a servant all the time, this does not turn me on. Servant sounds and feels like drudgery. Always serving, always serving, always serving. It sounds like too much work and no refreshment. Yet it reminds me of a person I do know. Connie and I both know this person. And she does have some really high-powered difficulties that she has right in the midst of her life. And I don't mind being of help to her. Just the presentation this morning when we were talking about servant, it just, like I say, it doesn't turn me on. Makes me tired. That's it.
Terry, can we throw in some celebrating along with the serving?
This is Anna, and I wanted to throw in some celebrating. We have going on 25 grandchildren, and my greatest joy is serving them and babysitting and helping out the parents so that they can continue to be pro-life. And it is a joy. The biggest joy came when we had a grandson named Dominic who has trisomy 18. And that's when I really started babysitting. And he was on oxygen and feeding tubes and all that, all kinds of stuff, surgery. And I just used to love it when he'd crawl in my lap and just put his arms around my neck and just sit there. And, you know, I thought that's what God wants us to do, is to just be with him and sit with him, because that gave me the greatest joy, and I could feel God's love in that. And so for me, the opportunity to serve my family has been the greatest blessing and joy in my life.
Thanks, Anna.
Wonderful. I think, Father Greg, are we ready to, you want to go on to your next segment?
I do.
Perfect. Thank you all for sharing. Okay, Father Greg and Father Larry, back to you.
So gratitude opens us up to invitations, especially invitations to share our gifts with other people, particularly in the form of service. That kind of sharing is a service to them. So I take you back to the fable of the mouse who was running through the jungle. This was a frisky young mouse, and after lunch in the heat of the day once, he was out exploring. He particularly enjoyed exploring the different surfaces in the jungle. Sometimes there was grass, sometimes some places were sandy, some were rocky. One day he was going over a new kind of surface and wasn't quite sure what it was. It seemed soft and maybe even fuzzy when he found a huge paw coming down and grabbing him, and heard the overwhelming roar of an angry lion. "You woke me up, and I'm going to eat you." The trembling mouse said, wait, I'm not that much of a meal anyway. If you let me go, I'll make sure I pay it back to you. With that, the lion at first started smiling and then actually began laughing. "What? You are going to pay me back? Well, you woke me up, but at least you got me to smile and laugh. Beat it." The mouse ran off, delighted to have been saved from this disaster. Just a couple days later, after this mouse had told his mice family of his close escape, there was a roar in the jungle. And everybody recognized that roar, and all the animals were running away from the direction of that lion roaring. But the mouse recognized that roar and saw it as an invitation. He ran in the other direction towards the lion's roar, and was able to size up the situation. There was the lion caught in a net that pinned his arms to his body and had him suspended from a tree. Hunters had set the trap, and there was his friend, the lion, caught. The mouse quickly ran up the tree, got to the net, and said, "Now hold still." And he went to work as his tiny teeth began to cut through key ropes so that that lion could fall free. As the mouse was just cutting the last rope necessary to get him free, the hunters were coming. The lion and the mouse could hear them in the distance, and both ran to escape, the lion carrying the mouse in his mane. That's the picture many artists like us to see at the end of this fable, the mouse in the mane of the lion, both of them celebrating and enjoying freedom. Go back to that moment where the mouse hears the roar of the lion. That's his invitation. That's where he can share his little unexpected gift with the lion who had been good to him. Both of them are grateful for being rescued, for those great simple gifts like being able to live on, to laugh, to run, to enjoy each other. I mentioned last time, I want to say something about gratitude in my life. I have lived from duty. I have lived from fear. I have lived from a sense of responsibility, and I have lived from purpose. None of those focuses has helped me to live as much as living from gratitude. People who live from fear or people who live from purpose often hurt and kill each other. Grateful people do not kill each other. Gratitude for me has been such a calming, directing force for my energies. Decisions I make when I'm grateful are good decisions. Gratitude pulls together my energies. And as I have said, gratitude sets me up for noticing invitations, for sharing my gifts, and for that serving that sometimes is a drudgery. I want to remind us of two important Christian prayers. The first is the Eucharist. I know we miss it these days. We miss the contact with each other, the singing, the gathering together, the feeding of ourselves with the Eucharist, the touching of each other, the hugs and the handshakes. But this is the central Christian act once we are baptized. And it gathers us to say at the key moment, let us give thanks. Let us give thanks for those great, simple gifts we so easily take for granted. The other prayer that for me centers more and more on gratitude is the Ignatian examen, a short time each day to look back over the day and to find God finding us in more and more that we do. That prayer starts with gratitude. Where has God been giving me things today? And one way to carry on with the examen is to say then, and where is God investing in me? Where is God opening me up to new invitations? And let me say, as I get further and further now into 79 years, there are also the invitations that come with being seniors, the invitation to give some things up, to live without some things we have had in the past, to share, to pass on some of the things we have enjoyed in life. Gratitude opens us up to invitations, to sharing, and to service. Blair?
Greg was talking about investment, and it comes from a Latin word meaning clothing, we have investitures, we have vestibules, we have actually vests. And to invest is to give something to make a profit. Most of you, I don't know, be able to attend the Eucharist tomorrow, but the gospel tomorrow is a wonderful story. And if you can't get it on video or something, it's in Matthew 25, verse 14 or somewhere. But the rich man, before going away, entrusts 5 amounts of money to somebody, to a servant, and 3, and to one person he gives. And that's an investment. Well, the story goes on, and it's kind of a pointed story that something is invested, and there ought to be a profit, some gain, and the master expects it. And when he returns there, the first 2 have done very well with the investment in clothing. And then the one that got 1 buried it. So there's lots and lots of interpretations of that. I brought some clothing, and now I'm invested. Am I different? No, there's a phrase called, a little statement, clothes make the man, clothes make the person. And is that true? Am I different? No, not in Ignatian spirituality, and not in Christian spirituality. Jesus has invested in us. Paul writes, so put on Christ. I say, no, realize that Christ has put you on. That the investment, the preciousness is not my sweatshirt. My identity is not that I'm at Creighton University, or I'm a Jesuit, or I'm a priest, or for God's sake that I'm a friend of Greg Carlson. My interior is Christ investing in me. I am a clothing of Christ then. And that's my hope, that what I do is done as a reflection and as a revelation of him. And we have, to the greater glory of God, ad meorum Dei gloriam, that glory is revelation, that we are, he has invested us for the greater revelation of the serving God. And it's a dignity, a worthiness. But our temptation is to define ourselves by our profits. The guy that buried 5 and 3, they made great profit. And that can be their identity. He said, good, you are very good. You did something for me. Now I will give you even greater things and all this stuff. That's not exactly Ignatian. We do what we are not what we do. We will reveal our name, as Peter does, as Jesus invests in him, changes his name, changes his identity, even after his denial. And he says, oh, now go and let me reveal myself through you, Peter, in how you catch people. The temptation, of course, is that we cling to our actions as who we are. And as Greg said, as we get older, there are things we cannot do, or at least we cannot do them so well or so easily. But Christ does not mature in us like that. Christ keeps investing himself in us, and we don't evaluate. That's the hell of it. Evaluation is a terrible thing. It's to take the value out of something. Our value is Christ. What we do is Christ, doing wonderful things through us. Some great, some little, some very private, some quite public. He has invested himself in us, buried himself in us. And we might have 5 or 3, but we don't bury Christ out of fear. We don't bury Christ in non-action. We don't bury Christ in the dirt of self-negativity and inferiority. He has buried himself as he did in the tomb, buried himself to rise in us that he may have life and we may have life to the full.
Larry, always knew you would deny me sometime. It's just a little bit like Peter and Jesus. Let me just say a little bit, and then we can, I think Larry turned to some quiet. Is that the right batting order? And does that sound good? We've all known the Ignatian phrase, finding God in all things. We actually stand that on its head for the students we teach. In continuity with what Larry is saying, the great simple gift of all is that God loves us and gives us life. That God in Jesus has claimed us in baptism as God's own. That's some of what Peter was experiencing on that boat. That's what Larry's talking about in God giving us our name, in God investing in us, investing God's love in us. What happens in life is not so much that we find God, but that we discover God finding us in more and more situations of life, continuing to invest in us, continuing to give us the gift of life, along with the invitation to keep going, to go further, to find ourselves not in what we do, but in who we are. So some of the invitation is to let Jesus look us in the eye, just as Peter did, and to let that tell us who we are. When Jesus and God invest in us, they are not just giving themselves to us, they're giving us to us. And that's an us worth celebrating, worth enjoying, and worth sharing. And we call some of that sharing service. Is this a time, Larry and Ann, to take 5 minutes of quiet for reflection?
Yes, yeah. And call
Great.
the time.
I will. Thank you so much. You gave us a lot to think about and reflect on. I took some notes, so I have plenty to think about. So it is, my watch says 11:52. We'll come back at 11:58, and then we can share some reflections. Again, if you would like to turn your camera off for some privacy, I invite you to do so, and I'll see you all in about 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay. So hopefully people are starting to rejoin us. I hope everyone had a nice time of reflection. Think about all the things that we learned this morning and heard this morning. I feel like on things like this, it takes, it always takes so much time to unpack all the wonderful things you hear. So I know we'll all be benefiting from this for days to come. So we can do a little sharing like we did previously. So again, if you have something you would like to share, you can either raise your hand like this, and one of us will hopefully see you, or if not, you can raise your hand via the hand raise function. And Linda Gabriel has her hand raised, so we can start with her. You can make sure you unmute yourself before you want to speak.
Yeah. Hello. I was really struck by the statement that we do who we are rather than we are what we do. I know I'm going to be unpacking that for a while. So just that right now has been, and I've got to say hi to Father Gillick. Hi, Larry. I worked at Creighton from all through the 90s. I guess another thing that has struck me in my retirement from Creighton that Father Gillick used, a phrase he used often was freedom from and freedom to. And I think when I was working full time, it was freedom from maybe attachments. But now I have a freedom that is unlike anything I've experienced in my adult life. And maybe some of that freedom too is service. Thanks.
Great, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think Michelle, is that your hand up? Yes, go ahead.
I was just thinking, this made me think about, and I've been fortunate to be involved with spiritual direction in an individual basis in the past. And one of the things that's brought up for me is that I found in reflecting on this, I started thinking about, I too, like Greg had mentioned, one of the things I find myself responding or making decisions out of responsibility a lot of times. And one of the things that I'm trying to learn is that that God meets us where we are, and that we don't have to do anything. And that's the hardest thing for me to embrace. I mean, it's like I don't know. I'm still working on that, but it's something that it was an astounding thing to me when it was pointed out, and I'm still trying to. But this reflection reminded me of that.
That thank you. We find that in our class too. The key word you said was have to. And our students will write need to, have to, should, ought. And Greg likes to tell them not to should all over themselves. It's Greg would say, and we write a lot, instead of have to, it's want to. And that's a big conversion.
Usually with a question mark. Do you want to do this? That's the question. Michelle and Brian, let me ask you, do you recognize the crucifix behind me, the cross?
We mentioned that we did.
Yeah, we noticed right away. Thank you.
I can tell other people. Brian and Michelle, together with Diane Greener, were in on creating and giving to me a gorgeous stole. I think the prompt was that we were having dinner together when we mentioned that I had been a Jesuit for 60 years. I think, those milestones come and go. But anyway, a few months later, they presented me with this beautiful stole. So if Larry's going to show and tell his sweatshirt, I can show and tell, not very well for the camera, this gorgeous stole, which I have been able to wear only in small Jesuit liturgies since the pandemic has gotten in our way. And Brian made a beautiful hanger for that stole. So yesterday, not wanting to show you my desk with all its pin-up little post-it notes giving all of my passwords for whoever breaks into my room and wants all $8 in my bank account. So I am sitting on my bed and I took off the poster of San Francisco streetcars and said, now where do I have a good cross that can work? And looked around and got frustrated and then looked at the hanger Brian made for my new stole. And that's the cross you see behind me as I sit on my bed with my monitor turned around from my desk, sitting on one of those plastic stools that they use for those of us who can't make our way around bathrooms anymore and need more furniture in our bathrooms. That's the end of that story.
Okay, I see Tara has her hand up.
Those old Jesuits.
I just wanted to comment that I felt a kinship when Father Greg was talking about where is God giving me gifts today, and remarking that as a senior, those gifts often are something to give up. And I find that there is some universality in that, that perhaps the most common experience of God's for me since March, especially as I endeavor to have my children here and schooling in different corners of the first floor. I just find that that has been a grace to be humiliated, but also that it's it seems to resemble your remark, and that it may not be bound by age, but rather the human experience more generally.
Thanks, Tara.
So thank you for that.
Your bandwidth goes in and out, Tara, but I think you're saying that it isn't just senior citizens who find invitation to yield things, to let them go. Does that sound right?
Right. Yes, I apologize. I'm in rural Wisconsin, so we have the amount of space that we have. But yeah, that's, I mean, I find there are opportunities for this in everyone's life, but I especially think that if you're attentive and a servant, you're going to be in a moment where you are not sure if that's chocolate or poop, and you know, that humiliation is a good moment to be in.
Tara, you're forgiven for your bandwidth problems because you're in Packer territory. I saw their hands up. Maybe Brian there?
Yep, I think so.
So thanks so much for the time together, but I would just like Larry and Greg's insight, you know, in chapter 5 of Luke, the author mentions also that with the abundance of fish, the nets don't tear. And what is the deeper dive on the significance of the nets not tearing?
That's a hard question, so Larry will answer it.
But I'd be glad to give you the answer. It's because it's a symbol, I think. That's a very good insight. It's a symbol that there are more fish to catch. And the symbol is the immensity of the mission and the immensity of possibilities. How's that?
I like it. Thank you.
Sounds good to me, Larry. I'm glad I came.
I'm glad I have something to add.
I think if we can maybe do one more, if someone else has something they want to share. Or that might be a good place to transition.
Larry, I think you've asked me to finish up for us. Does that sound right, Larry?
Whether I asked you before, I'm asking you now.
Thank
Do
you.
it.
So
You're good at it.
Two things.
Good
First,
at finishing.
thank you to Anne for creating this event. And a big thank you to all of you, whether in IVC or in other places that are serving after the model of Jesus inviting us to serve with him. Larry asked me to finish with a poem from Tagore, a great reminder that God loves us for who we are and not for what we do. Is a constant reminder of that is God's affection for the poor, the marginalized, those who don't have all of the great simple gifts that we have been able to enjoy. Tagore is not a Christian poet, but he understands that identification of God with the poor. Here is your footstool, and there rest your feet, where live the poorest and lowliest and lost. When I try to bow to you, my reverence cannot reach down to the depth where your feet rest among the poorest and lowliest and lost. Pride can never approach to where you walk in the clothes of the humble among the poorest and lowliest and lost. My heart can never find its way to where you keep company with the companionless among the poorest, the lowliest, and the lost. So our thanks go out to all of you who are with the poorest and the lowliest and the lost, whether they are children or senior citizens, whether they are people who struggle. Thank you for the service that you do. Anne?
Thank you so much. I'm just going to close with a few remarks, and we have our raffle, so we'll do that after my closing remarks. First, I just want to say a huge thank you to Father Greg and Father Larry. They are great friends of IVC, and they did not have to be here with us this Saturday morning. They just are doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. So thank you so much for not only being here with us, for taking time out of your day to be with us, but for everything you shared with us. It was so rich and so beautiful, and I think just so especially needed now. So a big thank you. Thank you so much. And I will continue to be thanking you. Lots of silent applauses. So thank you again. Truly, we all really appreciate it. I also want to thank two of our national staff from IVC is on here, or they were on here, Becky Ehrman and Mary McGinnity. So I just want to say thank you to them because they are wonderful leaders of IVC. And like I said, we're a nationwide nonprofit, and we get to do all these great things across the whole country. So a huge thank you to them for being great leaders. And I want to thank our advisory council in Omaha. They helped us be a success, and they sponsored this event. They helped plan this event, and they donated all of our raffle prizes. So a big thanks to them. And Jeff and Beth Moberg also helped sponsor this event. So just a huge thank you for that support. And finally, I want to thank our IVC members and all of you for being here and joining us. Again, I know you all might have other things on your Saturday morning, but thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. And thank you. So many of you donated. Thank you so much. That is really appreciated. It makes a huge difference in allowing IVC to continue to do things we do. So thank you for all of that. Okay, so I'm going to move on to our raffle. I'm going to try to do a screen share. We'll see if that'll work out for me. No, maybe I won't. Okay, well, I don't know if I can do a screen share, so I might just have to keep you all posted on the name that's drawn. So our very first raffle is a Marion mug and a Starbucks gift card. And the wheel is turning that you can all hopefully hear. And our person is Kevin Vaughan. We have 7 of these to draw for, so you got to bear with me. Our next one's another Marion mug and another Starbucks raffle. All of our attire is from schools and universities in Omaha. So that's really exciting. Our next raffle winner, Katherine Johnson. Okay, our next one is going to be for a Ron Colley shirt and an Amazon gift card. And our winner is, tick, 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 Michelle Desmet. Okay, our next one is going to be for a College of St. Mary's sweatshirt and a Whole Foods gift card. And our winner is Kathy Carlson. Okay, our next one is going to be for a Creighton Prep. It's one of our high schools, polo, and an Amazon gift card. And our winner is Elizabeth Rudersdorf. And our next one is going to be for a Mercy blanket and a Starbucks gift card. And our winner is Dan Brabick. Okay, and then this one is going to be for our Visa card. We have a $100 Visa card that was really generously donated by one of our council members, along with a Creighton mug. So that winner is Jean Tassoni. Okay, everybody. I'm gonna come back on Zoom and see you all. Thank you again so much for joining us. And I know a few of you asked me some questions on the chat, and so I will be able to respond. I know some of you were asking if this is something that you could watch later, and I will keep you all posted on that. So thank you again, and I will be reaching out to all of our winners via email. And if you have any questions about anything, you can please email me. You all have my email address, and I know I've sent you a lot of emails this week, so please reach out if there's anything you need, or if you are at all interested in learning more about IVC. Thank you again. Have a wonderful, wonderful Saturday. Father Greg, Father Larry, thank you. All of you, thank you so much. Susan Nats, happy birthday. Oh my goodness.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Keep the faith.
Thank you. You too. It's good to see you.
Good.
You did a great job setting this up, Ann. This is not easy. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. I had a lot of help. Thank you.